Broadcasting live on the Double Wide Network. It's time for The Real Deal. Join the ambassador and special guest hosts as they put together great guests and honest commentary on a range of issues. But one of their main topics will be preserving Native American tributes in sports team nicknames. Also avid fans of music and the arts, and they'll always make time for a great song or two. Now, it's time for The Real Deal. Here's your host, the Ambassador.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to The Real Deal in the beautiful Camelback Towers and Star Worldwide Networks. And I'm here with Kyle Pratt.
How's it going, everybody?
My producer, and then my other lovely producers, my wing chick here tonight. Say hi, Wendy.
I stole your wine. Hello.
I know you're up to something. Wendy West, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello.
So tell us, before we start the show, a little bit about what you did over in Glendale.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, in Glendale, I actually shot these scenes for this movie that's coming out. It's called The Corner Room. And I play a Jewish woman that ends up getting, forced out of her home and forced into a concentration camp.
Wow.
It was intense, and literally I was here at the studio and I did my show, and then from there I went straight to being on set, and we filmed till 2 a.m, and it was so cold, and I was wearing this light summer dress and just this little mink shawl. I was freezing. So in between takes, I was going up to the guys who were playing the Nazi soldiers and stealing their jackets and wearing them to get warm. So then, it's time to start, do the next scene. So I'd take off the jacket, give it right back to them. And yeah, it was good times.
Did they have a Hitler lookalike?
They did not have a Hitler lookalike, but I have to tell you, the way, because Gita Farid, she's the person, the lady who wrote it, but she's also the director. And she's very, very particular to make sure that everything is time appropriate or period appropriate. So originally she wanted to cast me as a, big old, woman Nazi soldier, but they couldn't find any uniforms big enough. Everything I put on, it was major high waters, and then my arms were too long, and then they couldn't put me into a men's uniform because then that wouldn't have been appropriate. So I'm like, I'll play a Jewish woman. I'll play a blonde Jewish woman. And that's what I did.
All right.
So I really wanted to be the bad guy, but I ended up being the one that,
So you were a Jewish princess.
I was a blonde-haired, blue-eyed one. So I'm like, and I'm looking at her and I'm like, gosh, I really hope that's appropriate that I'm blonde. She's like, don't worry. So,
Yeah. I got a hippie story I want to tell you.
Ooh, what is it?
Back in the day, some of my Navajo brothers and I, we went up to Haight-Ashbury.
I love Haight-Ashbury.
Yeah.
In San Fran?
Uh-huh.
Ooh, I buy the best lingerie there.
So that's where the movement started. Mm-hmm. So we decided we wanted to be hippies. So we go up to Haight-Ashbury, and we hang out for, 3, 4, 5 days. And I said, to hell with this, man. I want to go home.
I want to take a shower.
Yeah.
It's funny. Well, of course, you could tell by my name, Wendy West. My parents are a little bit on the hippie-ish side. My dad, he would go whenever the Grateful Dead were on tour. He'd go on tour with them, and they'd sleep in people's yards and just, that's what he did.
So he was a roadie.
He was a roadie, and Major he was awesome. He was a really cool guy. I mean, my hair is, it's down to my waist, and his hair was longer than mine when he was alive. Yeah.
Did he wear the musk oil?
Yes, and a lot of the tea tree oil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the musk oil. I can't stand that stuff.
I can't stand perfume now. I just when people wear perfume, I'm like, ooh, no, please don't do that. Just
Yeah.
deodorant's good, and we'll call it even.
I lasted about a week being a hippie, and then I decided, let's go home. We're Navajos.
I think I would have more fun being Navajo.
Yeah.
That's an awesome culture right there.
Yeah,
and
you'd be
there's
a
so
great
much to
Navajo
be
princess.
able to learn from it. Oh my goodness, how fun.
Well, I'm going to take you up there someday.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a reservation education.
That would be cool.
Yeah,
That'd be really cool.
Yeah, I'll give you the tour. It's actually very nice, especially in the summertime.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's winter up there right now.
Oh, it's too cold. I don't do roller snow.
Yeah.
I'm not a nice princess. I look like one, but I'm not.
Well, we want to shout out to all the teams that honor Native Americans, Kansas City Chiefs, Cleveland Indians, Atlanta Braves, Golden State Warriors, Blackhawks, Redskins. Our Redskins lost, as you know, Kyle.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, they lost over at FedEx Field because I was hoping they'd win because we were going to have one big hell of a tailgate party out here this weekend.
Yeah.
I'll get 3,000 Indians down here.
Yeah. They still got the Chiefs to root for this
Yeah,
Saturday, too.
the Chiefs. So we got to root for the Chiefs. They're in it, but they got a tough road with New England.
Yep. I believe in them. I believe the Chiefs will take it.
Yeah, I hope so.
I know so.
We had some special medicine men out at Arrowhead.
Yep.
Helping them out. And again, we want to thank all of our listeners all over the country and our sponsor, Graves Propane, ladies and gentlemen. The Graves family are friends of mine for many, many years. It's a family-owned propane company in northern Arizona. They service the Navajo Nation, the Hopi Nation, the Grand Canyon, and businesses up in Coconino County and Navajo County and Apache County. And they have offices in Flagstaff. Their phone number is 928-714-1111. And tell them the Real Deal sent you, because they support the Real Deal, and without them, I don't think we'd be on here, to be honest with you. Also want to shout out to all the people that listen to our show. Star Worldwide has 5 million listeners. They're the number one internet radio show in the country, and we've been on now for a year. And tell them who's number one, Kyle.
The Real Deal, Ambassador.
That's it. And it's all because of you guys. We went to the top, and we want to keep on going. So we could use some more sponsors. You can contact me at yellowhorse.us, info@yellowhorse.us, website's yellowhorse.us, 602-540-3000 is a number, and we'll work a deal with you, whatever makes you comfortable. You can advertise on the show. You can donate to the show. You can do whatever you want to do. Always, I want to shout out to my Navajo brothers and sisters. Yate she dene, Dennis Yellowhorse and she, Hadish banana, Quetzala, 505 Quetzala, Flagstaff Quetzala, Navajo Nation. And when you get down to Scottsdale, we'd like to have you come into the studio. You've been in before. You're always welcome, and we got your back. We got a good lineup tonight. An interesting gentleman's going to be coming on. That's one of the things I did want to mention. Our songs tonight. I always pick the songs, and I wanted to pick David Bowie's songs because he died, as you know, Kyle.
Yep.
And he was an English rocker, David Bowie, and he did some great music, and he recorded with the Rolling Stones and all the big names because he was a big name. So our songs tonight are going to be David Bowie songs that I handpicked for you. I think with that being said, we're going to play a song, and then we're going to fly over to Kansas City, and we're going to have our first guest. He's an interesting gentleman. He'll be coming on here in a little bit. So, Kyle, why don't you get the Real Deal Airlines ready to roll? Tell the pilots to kick the tires, light the fires, and let's rock.
Only don't be unkind. I can take you the time. Oh, Doogie, don't crash here. There's only room for one. Here she comes, as she comes. Don't need only man. Then I'm gonna ticket. I'm back on Suffragette City. Don't need only man. You can't afford the ticket. I'm back on Suffragette City. She's out of sight. She's all right. Suffragette City. Don't lean on the man. You can't afford the ticket. I'm back on Suffragette City. Don't lean on the man. You can't afford the ticket. I'm back on Suffragette City. Don't lean on the man. You can't afford the ticket. I'm back on Suffragette City. She's out of sight. She's alright. Suffragette City. Suffragette City. Suffragette City! Suffragette! Wham, bam, thank you, ma'am! Suffragette City! 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 Suffragette! Suffragette!
Those guys look great on film, but you don't know what they really look like. I mean, they're my friends.
Okay, we're back. That was David Bowie. So we're going to be playing his songs throughout the program tonight in honor of him. I want to introduce my guest this evening. His name is Richard Linnell. He's president of the Indian Council of Many Nations, Kansas City, Missouri-based organization dedicated to providing opportunities for the American Indian people in the region to participate in their culture. He's Lakota, and before moving to Missouri, he taught American Indian children in Gallup, New Mexico. And that's where I grew up. So, Richard, welcome to The Real Deal.
Thank you very much. And I feel it to be an honor to be on your show and be a guest. Before we continue, if you don't mind, I'd like to give a quick shout-out to some people I taught years and years ago. Alan Talk, John Yazzie, Inez Padilla, Deanna Anaya, Philip Montgomery, Diane Sandoval. Those are just a few of the people I taught my first 2 years of teaching. I left Missouri to work with Indian children, and I thoroughly enjoyed it.
That's very honorable. And so, how many? You spent several years in Gallup?
I was only there for 2 years. We came back to Missouri for graduate work, and I discovered the Kansas City Indian Club, which is now the Indian Council of Many Nations, and having had a background with the American Indian culture, I really felt in my heart that having taught in Indian country and in Navajo land in the Four Corners area, that there were plenty of people to teach their children the American Indian ways and the culture and to walk the red road, not the black. But the Indian population or mixed Indian population of the Kansas City area lacked the leadership. We were losing people away from the culture. And so I joined the Indian Council of Many Nations to assist them in the endeavor of working with the American Indian people and having them come out. It's so easy for many urban American Indian people and people of lineage to just kind of melt in and lose their culture.
Right.
So that's how I ended up. Now, I've taken my family back to the Southwest several times, and years ago, my favorite place to visit was Tobe Turpin's Trading Post.
Right.
And a few other places, too. They're just more special than others.
Yeah.
I still have strong feelings for those red rocks around Gallup.
Right.
And its people.
Yeah.
My organization has two websites that I'd like to mention.
Absolutely.
The first one is the organizational one, kc-icmn.org. And the second one is snaws.org. The first one is the organization. The second one is a program that we have every March, and this year's March 19th, which teaches many things about the American Indian culture. I'll elaborate as we go through the program.
Great. And you also do some powwows up there, right?
We do for over 50 years, we've done a summer and winter powwow, and these are traditional powwows.
Right.
The Indian Council has had a traditional summer and winter powwow for over 50 years. And what's unique is we don't charge for parking or admission.
Right.
The staff honorariums come from advertising and donations.
Sure.
We do the best we can to preserve traditional ways. We sing, dance, and drum to honor our ancestors, the Creator, and to teach our children. And these things are all very important. In fact, several families have started using our powwows as a family reunion event.
Wow.
Our winter powwow is February 13th, right across the street from Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City.
No, that's awesome.
We are very active. May not have a huge number, but we're growing. And it's like any other organization. Members kind of come and go, and there are always those more dedicated than others.
Sure. Well, it's good what you're doing, and then I'm so happy that the Chiefs reached out to people like me and you and Johnny Leonard to initiate the dialogue that's that needs to take place.
Well, that was interesting how that worked out, because we knew things were happening on the East Coast that weren't fair, they weren't logical, and they were motivated by Anglo greed and power.
Right.
And I personally knew Lamar Hunt and H. Robartle, who the Chiefs were named after. But anyway, Johnny Learned called Mark Donovan, president of the Kansas City Chiefs, and said, you have a storm brewing, and things are coming, and I think we need to get together. And within a couple of weeks, Johnny Learned, myself, and Mark Donovan sat down and had a meeting, and it was very constructive. In fact, Mark Donovan actually asked us, what are the issues? Well, being strong American Indian people who believed in our culture, we told him. And some of it was a surprise, and some of it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
He really didn't know what he had.
Right.
They have been, from the very beginning, they have been very receptive. We have had no arguments, no fights over anything. We believe in education, not confrontation. So everything has worked out very well. And people say, well, it's just a passing thing or a token thing. Okay, I have 4 of the top Chiefs management on speed dial on my phone. I can call them anytime I want about any concern I have, and they're very open. We have a booth at every home game in the fan experience area where we passed out literature that concerns face paint, headdresses, other things that are offensive to the American Indian people when you have people, non-Indian people, who haven't earned the right for paint and haven't earned the right to wear those feathers. So, and it's, Dennis, it's not a light switch. These things take time.
I know, yeah.
And we have eliminated many things that were offensive to the American Indian people. We're working on others. There's a woman who rides a horse called War Paint, and in the past she was wearing a chieftain's headdress, or a feathered headdress.
Right.
She doesn't wear that anymore. There are announcements or words on the jumbotron that remind people of certain things. Next year, our goal is to have the security people not allow anybody into the stadium wearing feathers or face paint. And we're just about there. We're going to double the number of appearances at the Arrowhead Stadium because we are going to have an information booth and people talking at all the preseason games. And when I approached Bill Chapin, Vice President of Chiefs Operations, about that with that proposal, he said, "Why didn't we think about that before?"
Right.
So that's how we're on the same page.
Yeah. Well, no, that's good. I mean, because it's like I told you, when I talked to you before the show, we're here to educate, not eradicate.
Well, we've had in the early times, we had people from the East Coast come here trying to rouse the American Indian community to go against the chiefs and everything. These people from the East Coast don't know the Midwest.
Right.
They don't know Kansas City or our culture.
And they don't know the Southwest either.
No, they don't. And this is what happens when you have somebody from the outside who is being funded by big money to come in and trying to undercut your own customs and traditions. That's totally wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
I know Johnny may have been on the program and told you this, but the Kansas City Chiefs name wasn't just picked out of a hat.
Right.
Atro Bartle began his professional career. He was a young scout executive up in Casper, Wyoming, and he was trying to find some information, some ideas to develop a youth organization that would have, good moral character and good things to build on to become a good adult citizen. And he met an Arapaho chief named Lone Bear. He spent so much time on the Arapaho Indian Reservation with the chief and the tribal elders that his own friends started calling him Little Chief.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of making fun of him. Well, Atro Bartle fell in love with the American Indian culture and everything the customs and traditions stood for. He would spend weeks at a time when the opportunity presented itself with the Cheyenne, the Arapaho, and the Lakota, and just soaking up as much knowledge. And the tribal elders appreciated the fact that he cared,
Mm-hmm.
and he believed in their way of life. This chief, Lone Bear, was very, very old, probably close to death. And before he passed away, he gave Atro Bartle was adopted into the Arapaho Indian Nation, and the chief gave him his name, Lone Bear. Then Atro Bartle left that area and came down to the Kansas City area, where he was a very successful Boy Scout executive, but he was very popular. People wanted him to run for mayor. And he did, and the whole city just supported him, and he was easily elected. And so fast forward to the 1960s, you had the Dallas Texans, and you had the Dallas Cowboys football team. And Lamar Hunt, of course, owned the Dallas Texans, and he wanted to move them out of that market because two football teams just wouldn't work.
Right.
And so at the same time, Atro Bartle, Joyce Hall of Hallmark Cards, and some other prominent people in Kansas City were trying to get the word out. Kansas City's more than a cow town.
Right.
And so Atro Bartle actually flew down to Texas to invite Lamar Hunt to come up and check out the town. And Lamar Hunt came up, and he and H. Robartle just hit it off very quickly, became very good friends. And Lamar Hunt was very surprised at the warm reception he received from all of the community leaders of the greater Kansas City area. And but what Hunt noticed was every place they went, no one called Bartle Mayor, no one called him Roe. Everybody said, "Oh, the chief's coming," or "the chief's here." That name followed him all the way from Wyoming.
Wow, that's a great story.
And so finally, Lamar Hunt says, "You've done so much to help us out. I am definitely going to move the team to Kansas City." And so that was decided. Lamar Hunt would move. But then you had these two great men, Lamar Hunt and H. Robartle, sitting for almost a half a day. What are we going to call the team? And neither one of them, they kept batting names back and forth. And finally, Lamar Hunt said, "You've done so much to get us here, and you've been so much help. Why don't we just call it the Chiefs, after you?" So the Kansas City Chiefs were actually named for the adopted son of an Arapaho chief. We had these people coming from the East Coast a couple of years ago, and they want to get rid of that. To me, that's genocide.
It is. That's what I said. It's social and cultural genocide, and I'm deathly afraid of that.
Well, we have communities around the Kansas City area that have, like, there's the Shawnee Mission High School, and their name is the Indians. Well, the Shawnee Indians lived on all of that land. They're honoring the people. You have the another community, Santa Fe, and they're called, I think, the Chiefs. And well, the Santa Fe Railroad went through there. You know, the super chief
right.
at the time. And so Fort Osage is another community in Kansas City, and of course Fort Osage, and they're called the Indians. Well, the Osage Indians lived there. In fact, our summer powwow is always held on a site that was a former Osage Indian land, and technically it still is, because the people who own it now are part of Indian Ministry Association, Cultural Association, and it was just a perfect fit for them to have us there with that summer powwow. We'd been there before, and when we came back, it was like we'd never been gone.
Wow.
So if we get rid of these things, it's easy to forget the American community.
That's exactly right.
Even existed.
That's exactly right.
But see, Dennis, that's what some people want.
I know. That's exactly what their MO is.
And that means that these people from the East Coast and other places come in, eliminate the culture, destroy their economics, take over their land.
Exactly.
I mean, these are things that I see could happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Get rid of the treaties.
Yeah, and what these people also didn't understand is Lamar Hunt and his wife Norma loved history. They went to things. They studied historical sites and events. They collected artifacts and different antiques and things. And so it was just a natural fit. I worked for Lamar Hunt for 5 years.
Really?
In the security department, in addition to being a teacher in the Kansas City area. So I had time to spend with Lamar and Norma. And at the same time, when I was a young boy, H. Robartle was a very common visitor to my parents' house.
Wow.
So when all this stuff started happening, I had more than a personal interest in stopping all this negative activity.
Yeah.
I feel like in some ways I might have helped bridge the gap because I knew the people from the Chiefs, and I knew who the Chiefs were named for. And I didn't want anyone to desecrate either one of those names or the culture. So
Right.
I guess I'm kind of standing on a soapbox. But
No,
you
keep
understand how
going. I
feel.
mean, this is a great story, huh, Kyle?
But you understand how I feel about it.
Yeah, well, you understand. This is my passion. This is why I'm doing this show.
Well, the bottom line, Dennis, is we strive to walk the red road, not the black.
Mm-hmm.
And as A.C. Ross said years ago in his book, we are all related. People need to understand that.
Right.
And respect each other.
Right.
But so we do the powwows and we do all these things to help people. And when you tell people we dance to honor our ancestors, the Creator, and to teach our young, some people want to, some of the Anglos or non-Indian people, well, how much money do you make out of it? Dennis, that's not why we do it.
That's right. That's not why I do this show. I'm not here to make money out of this. I'm just here to spread the message.
Money from a food booth. We make money from a food booth, and hopefully donations cover the programs and honorariums and things like that. But it seems to be working. We believe in reinforcing cultural traditions of the American Indian people,
Sure.
but also at the same time educating the public so they know what is appropriate and not offensive to our people.
Right.
That's just plain common sense. We are not a group that expects some big name person to come in and then jump on their coattails. We all know what happens a lot of times. These people come in, they don't know us, they get everybody all worked up, and then the whole community is in turmoil. And what happens? They leave.
That's
and
right.
They leave a mess that never should have been.
That's right. And that's
Well,
that's what they're doing to these schools, like Adidas. I don't know
Right.
if you heard about Adidas. They're going around the country getting all the schools that have Native American names, paying them to change their name, and they'll give them shirts and they're out in California big time doing this right now. And that's why I tell our listeners, and I make no bones about it, boycott Adidas. Don't buy Adidas. Go buy Nike or Reebok or whatever.
And see, that's just it. People should not prostitute themselves for the good of large corporations or people who have a political or economic agenda.
That's right.
Wrong.
Yeah, it definitely is. A lot of people don't know too. Your story's great. I want to continue, but about the history of the Redskins. When the Washington Redskins moved from Boston, they were called the Boston Braves.
Right.
And they moved to Washington, D.C. And their coach come out of the Indian School of Carlisle, and his name was Lone Star Dietz. Mm-hmm. And they come in, and their first linemen were Native Americans. Well, the owner of the team, they said, we want a proud Indian symbol as our logo. So they went out to Browning, Montana, and they talked to the Blackfeet Nation, and they had their people design the logo that's currently on the Washington Redskins helmet today. And it was done tastefully, and the elders blessed it, and then hand-delivered it to Washington, D.C., and that's what's on the logo today and on the caps and the shirts and everything.
So why should anybody get rid of it?
Right.
It makes no sense. I, as a teacher, I get frustrated sometimes because if you have any listeners who have ever been to New York City or Chicago, but especially the East Coast, many people don't know, because it's never been written down and never been explained, that there were many people who didn't want to work on those high levels building those skyscrapers.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people were afraid. Along came Mohawk Indians.
Right.
To them, they were closer to the
Right.
So it wasn't just immigrants from Europe who built those buildings. There was a significant American Indian population.
Yep, that's true.
But
And
we don't hear about them.
no. And even the skyscrapers here in Phoenix, the Mohawk Indians, and I think now there's other tribes, maybe even Navajos, down here working on them.
So and that's just it doesn't make the newspapers, does it, Dennis?
No, it doesn't. You know, October 12th, a year ago, the Redskins played the Arizona Cardinals here at the Phoenix Stadium, and the word got out, and there was 3,000 Native Americans from all the different tribes, Arizona, New Mexico, California, that come to like the biggest tailgate party of all time. Yeah. And there was about 50 protesters down the street, and the newspaper made it sound like they had 3,000 protesters, and they didn't even hardly mention us.
Well, this is what happened with us when we first did. November's American Indian Month nationwide,
right?
And when we had a big ceremony at Arrowhead Stadium, we had an Arapaho chief came, Moses Starr came, and with many people. We had American Indian drum, American Indian color guard. The chiefs have a big 8-foot in diameter drum, and that was blessed for a second time. It was originally many years ago, but it was blessed again. All these things happened. We had an American Indian children's choir and a professionally known American Indian woman singer do the Star Spangled Banner. All these things happened, and CBS, National Network, Channel 5, was there, and Dennis, not 1 second of any of that made it on national television.
That's absolutely incredible.
Now, here's the bottom line, and this is important for your listeners. If we'd been out there with bullhorns and signs, yelling and screaming, it would have been blasted all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
But because we believe in education, not confrontation, and because the chiefs have been willing, in fact, asking, what more can we do? How can we do it? What do you see? What do you think? There's no reason to yell and scream. Dennis, if the world would choose their words carefully and how they delivered them, there'd be no reason for yelling and screaming.
That's right.
Just choose your words carefully and how you deliver them. You don't need to yell and scream.
Right.
Everything has been very, very cooperatively handled with the American Indian Community Working Group and the Kansas City Chiefs. I wish other people could learn that lesson. But the sad thing is, there are other people just like us around the United States, but they don't get the publicity either. It all goes to the negative, loud, screaming people.
Well, they look at this racism when they play. They're the ones that's playing the race card, the name changers.
Oh, absolutely.
And they look at that as a real juicy, easy story.
Yes. Because people don't know the truth.
Yeah, and that's why our show went to number one, because they want to know the truth. They want to hear the real deal. They want to know what the heck's really going on.
Well, if you look at our country as a whole, think back a few years when Canada hosted the Olympics, and when Canada hosted the Olympics, they used an American Indian, the Native American theme.
Mm-hmm.
They highlighted all of the Native American groups in all of Canada. There was dancing, there was singing, there was drumming. It was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And they basically they showcased and promoted the American Indian people. I'm still waiting for anything like that to happen in the United States.
Right.
If you know the true history of our country, we had 3 different presidents sign extinction orders, and that's how they were written.
I know.
Extinction orders.
Yeah, and then this guy Halbritter, that's not an Oneida Indian. He owns a casino. He's a total fake. He's a fraud, back in New York, and he's got the guy that wrote The Wizard of Oz. He named a casino after him, and that guy called for the annihilation of Indians.
There are people like that.
Yeah.
And, it's just like our group, the Indian Council of Many Nations, is made up of people who are full-blood card carriers. There are people who have a lot of lineage like I do, and there are people who are just who have no American Indian lineage at all, but they're really interested in preserving the culture.
Mm-hmm.
And this has all really worked well. The officers, the upper level officers in our organization have to be card carriers or be able to show lineage.
Sure.
My situation is not unique to the American Indian community of today. My great-great-grandmother literally burned all of the paper records that would actually be able to get a card for me today. But you have to understand the times. This was the early 1900s, and she had memories of Wounded Knee and all these things going on in her head. If she had a piece of paper in front of her with a number and a name on it, to her she was owned by the American government.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in her heart and how she felt, that she was actually owned by the government, and she was not going to be a prisoner in her eyes to a foreign power.
Right.
But what does the United States want now? They want to see paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still looking for, something that would bridge that one generation gap.
Mm-hmm.
But my grandfather was named after a very famous American, and when I tell people, they really don't get it, because his name was Jesse James Lanou. Okay, now here you have the mother was a full-blood Lakota, and she's giving birth in a house in Aroma Park in Illinois, and a baby boy is born, and she could not speak English very well, didn't understand much of it, couldn't read much of it. But anyway, she had to come up with, the Indian name was their White Eagle, the White Eagle clan of the Lakota. And she had to come up with what you would call a Christian name or English name.
Mm-hmm.
She could not think of one. And finally, they said, think of the greatest American you know. And she said, Jesse James. Well, okay, now you have to understand, Jesse James initially robbed government payrolls. The farmers and ranchers of Missouri were literally forced, to sell their land to the railroads.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want to do it, but they didn't have it. It was either going to be taken or they had to sell. And so that's why Jesse James initially started robbing. Well, what happened with Indian land? The government took it.
Mm-hmm.
The miners took it. The settlers took it. So in her eyes, Jesse James was a hero.
Right. He's a Robin Hood.
And so, but the family did not want that name on, in the record stuff. So they knew she couldn't recognize very many names. She could recognize a few letters. So they changed it to James Joseph. Jesse James Joseph, 2 J's.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so it ended up being James Joseph, but Dennis, to the day she died, she called him Jesse.
Right. Well, I want to tell you, I'm going to take a short break. I don't want you to go anywhere. And we're going to play a song. We're going to be right back. And then I want to tell you a little story about my Navajo Che, how he got his name.
Okay.
Just hang right in there.
will drive them away. We can beat them just for one day. We can be heroes just for one day. And you can be me. And I'll drink all the time. 'Cause we're lovers, and that is a fact. Yes, we're lovers, that is that. For nothing will keep us together. We could steal time just for one day. We can be heroes forever and ever. What you say? I wish you could swim like dolphins can swim. Though nothing will keep us together. We can beat them forever and ever. Oh, we can be heroes just for one day.
Okay, we're back. That was David Bowie. We Can Be Heroes. So I want to continue the conversation, Richard. Are you still there?
Yes.
Okay, I got a little story to tell you. Peter McDonald was the chairman of the Navajo Nation.
I remember.
Yeah.
I lived there.
That's right.
And I remember him quite well.
Yeah, and he's my Navajo dad. He's like I call him Che. He's really close to me. And he was very close to my wife and my wife's family. Yep. But when he was a little boy, he had a Navajo name, and as all the Navajos did. And they took him to the boarding schools. And when they got him to a boarding school, they said, you're not going to speak Navajo, and if you do, we're going to wash your mouth out with soap. And you got to pick a white man's name. So think of something that you like, or something famous, or something. So the only thing he could think of was Old MacDonald had a farm. Yeah. And so that was his name. But what was interesting was later he went into the Marine Corps, as all young Navajos did. And he was out at Camp Pendleton, and they grouped all these Navajos together out there, and that's when they sprung it on him that they wanted to develop a code with the Navajo language that nobody could break. And they did, as you know. And it helped win the war. But when they went in there, they said, "We're not going to get in trouble for speaking Navajo, are we?" They said, No. But please continue with your story.
Okay, where were we?
Well, we were talking about your grandmother.
Yeah, my ancestry. So she named my grandfather Jesse James, and the family changed it to James Joseph. Well, she still called him Jesse. But I'll tell you what happened with him. My grandfather was discriminated against. He ended up in Chicago and was discriminated against. I learned about discrimination from my grandfather, not from an African American or anybody like that, but from an American Indian background person. My grandfather was discriminated. He was very intelligent, but he was discriminated. He was refused jobs and had other issues too, all because of his American Indian heritage.
Right.
And like many people of the early 1900s, late 1800s, that era, they tried to hide it.
Right.
They didn't ignore their culture, but they tried to hide it. Of course, when if you saw a picture of my grandfather, you'd know that it's pretty hard to hide the way he looked. But so all these things kind of got put on the back burner until he had a grandson. And when I was in third grade, my grandfather came from Chicago. Well, at school, I was learning all about the Navajo. And you know how textbooks are.
Sure.
And this was the 1950s, mid to early 1950s. And I was learning about the Navajo raising and growing the crops and all those kinds of things. And other Indians too, and this is what I was doing at school. This is what I was learning at school, and so anyway, my grandfather come, and we called him Papa New. It was just a pet name that the grandkids had, and I'm sitting on his lap, and I said, "Papa New, tell me about the Navajo." And he said, "Oh, Dene." Now this was the 50s. So, anyway, he said Navajo, and he said, "Well, originally, many years ago, there were wars, there were battles. Indian nations weren't always that peaceful, and Indian leaders weren't always that peaceful with each other. And there began, all of a sudden, I'm learning the truth, that there were alliances, there were groups that got along, there were groups that didn't get along, and all these different things that were not in the textbooks. And so I went to school, and I was telling these teachers all these things that I learned from my grandfather, good things learned it all. And but I would go to school and I'd tell my teacher, and boy, did I get in trouble. Because, and from the time I was in third grade, Dennis, and this is fact, and this is what, something touched my heart. I really feel the Creator blessed me in a special way, because I began a search for the truth and knowledge about my people, my background, and they became my people. And so I began learning as much as I could, talking to as many people as I could. Even as a child, when I was 15, I started doing American Indian presentations, and I used family artifacts. I have a ceremonial pipe that goes back to the they say the mid 1800s. That's been in my family that long. And I had some other things. I started there, and I would talk to scout troops. I would talk to anybody who would listen. But I did my best to separate the fact from the fiction. American Indian people are honorable people. They are intelligent. They speak multiple languages. I mean, the Lakota Indians didn't even at the time did not even have a word for divorce. If in the early days, you just if something happens to a parent, you had 50 fathers, you had 50 mothers. If somebody needed help, you shared food. If somebody needed a place to stay, you shared lodging. And I learned stories about Sitting Bull and Red Cloud, and how they would go to the east, with Buffalo Bill's Wild West show and other places like that, and they were shocked at the deplorable conditions that some American people lived in. They couldn't understand why people who had much were not sharing with those who had little.
Right.
And in their culture, everybody shared. And I know I'm throwing a lot of things out there.
No, it's good. I want our listeners to hear this.
But all these things happened. They could not understand. And I'm still tracing my ancestry, trying to find things. We originally thought that my great-great-grandfather, I don't know how many greats there are in there, had been assassinated with Sitting Bull. And I don't think your audience would mind me using that word, because that's pretty much what it was.
No, that's great.
And so then I have a very close friend who traveled quite a bit around the country, and he also has a strong interest in the American Indian culture. He has Cherokee lineage, and he saw the White Eagle name on the one of the big stone at Greasy Grass. Most people call that Little Bighorn. So I'm finding bits and pieces. Right when I think I'm there, I come to a roadblock, and so, that's just the search goes on, and
well, you're like me and our listeners. You want the truth.
Well, and in my lifetime I might not find it, but I'm very much at peace with who I am and what I do, because the Indian in my heart far outweighs anything else. I read books written by American Indian people, not white man's whatever.
Right.
I read and I try to talk to people who have a pure heart, who do things for the right reasons, and it's worked for me. I do have a few slips from time to time, because I belong to several different organizations, and every once in a while I'll be leading a prayer, and I kind of forget about where I am, because I am who I am, and I'll start out by saying Akashoa, grandfather, and I'll use some more words, and I'll say Atewa Khan, our Heavenly Father. And all of us, I'm mixing cultures, and I don't think about it until it's over. And instead of saying amen, I say, oh. And,
right.
Some people understand, some people don't, but in some cases I have to explain. And I go to some groups and I'll actually ask, is it okay if we begin with a prayer?
Right.
My favorite story is this happened in the 1800s. There was American Indian family. They were Navajo actually, and they were working in their fields, and a wagon full of local white people drove by, and they knew each other. And they said, well, aren't you going to church? You should be in church. It's Sunday. This is the day we talk to the Lord. And the Navajo father said that I'm sorry for you that you only talk to your God one day a week. We talk to ours all the time. And I would venture to guess people of the American Indian Church, even Christian American Indians, prayer isn't something you work for or plan for or use at a certain time. It's a way of life.
It is. Absolutely.
And are we perfect? No. But do we strive to be? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something you just do at mealtime or when you get up and go to bed. It's he put us here, and I'm afraid too many people don't understand. Like I was talking about the beauty of the red rocks.
Mm-hmm.
My mother, when my mother first came out to visit me, she was used to a lot of trees and grass. Well, we have that in the Cibolo National Forest in McGaffey and the Grand Canyon National Forest, all these places. But anyway, she, this desert country to her, and excuse the expression, but she described it as 2 miles past where God lost his shoes. And she didn't see the beauty of the banded rocks, of the red rocks, of the shadows. You know how Gallup is.
Right.
It's like the Grand Canyon.
It is.
When you live in the area, you never see the same view twice.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the way that the shadows, the sun, just everything works.
Right.
And it's the Creator is amazing with
Yeah,
what he's given us, but we don't recognize it.
I feel very fortunate to grow up there.
Yes.
Yeah. Richard, we're out of time, but I want you to come back on the show.
I would be happy to, because like we have our Share Native American Ways programs and a few other things. I'd love to tell your listeners about it.
Yeah, and then share with your people what I'm doing out here.
I've already done it, and we have a big meeting coming up this weekend.
Yeah, and any of them that want to come on that feel as passionate as you and I do, and Johnny, and our other listeners, I'll give them the mic.
I will be very happy to do that.
Okay.
And thank you for the opportunity to be on your program.
Absolutely, and Hagonet. And I'll see you when I get to Kansas City, because I'm involved with Johnny with the American Indian Center, so I'm going to be up there helping him, and I'll see you when I get there.
Well, if you see a strange-looking guy wearing a ribbon shirt, don't be surprised, because I do wear them from time to time, and not just at powwows.
Okay, my friend.
Okay, have a good evening, sir.
You too, and I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Very good.
Okay, what an interesting guest.
Oh yeah, he had so much more that he could talk about.
Oh, I know.
Got to get him back on.
I want to get him back on, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy's well read, and that was an interesting story about the mayor of Kansas City and getting how the Chiefs got there.
Yeah, he has an interesting backstory.
Yeah, that's all good. I think, Kyle, we got a couple more songs in the queue, don't we?
Yes, we do.
Play one for our listeners, please.
Okay, Tokyo, South America, Australia, France, Germany, UK, Africa. Calling out around the world, are you ready for a brand new beat? Summer's here and the time is right. We're dancing in the street, dancing in Chicago, down in New Orleans, in New York City. All we need is music, sweet music. There'll be music everywhere. There'll be swinging, swaying, records playing, dancing in the street. Oh, it doesn't matter what you wear, just as long as you are there. Come on, every guy, grab a girl, everywhere, around the world. They'll be dancing, dancing in the street. It's an invitation across the nation, a chance for folks to meet. Love laughing and singing and music swinging, dancing in the street. Philadelphia, PA, Baltimore, Louisiana. Don't forget the Motor City, on the streets of Brazil. Back in the USSR, don't matter where you are, all we need is music, sweet music. There'll be music everywhere. There'll be swinging, swaying, records playing, dancing in the street. Oh, it doesn't matter what you wear, just as long as you are there. Come on, every guy, grab a girl, everywhere, around the world. They'll be dancing, they're dancing in the street. Way down in LA, every day, dancing in the street. Crossing China too, me and you, dancing in the street.
Okay, we're back. That was Mick Jagger and David Bowie, Dancing in the Street. That was a great song, wasn't it?
It's one of my favorites. Great song.
Yeah. Okay, so we're out of time, but great show tonight. Great show. And that's the kind of people that come on The Real Deal, is something important to say and not just a bunch of name change crap that we hear from Hal Britter and his phony gang. And so we're pretty much at the end of the road. Again, if you like us, share it. If you really like us, consider being a sponsor or an advertiser. We don't need millions. We don't need hundreds of thousands. But we do need some financial help. And we can be reached at www.yellowhorse.us or info@yellowhorse.us. And the phone number is 602-540-3000. And then my other company is humate.com, HUMATE, where we produce an organic material there in Gallup at Navajo, and we ship it worldwide, and it's an organic fertilizer, and it's also a feed additive for animals. And so check that website out if you would, and let's do some business together that might make you guys some money and keep us going. But it was a great show. I enjoyed it. It was a little different, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Different's always good, though.
Yeah, it's always good. That's what our listeners want to hear. I think we got one more song, and if you would, play it.
Yep.
Okay, that was our David Bowie segment for the evening, ladies and gentlemen. Kyle, tell everybody about the new app that's we have to download now, or need to download.
Yeah, for the new 2016 update for the Star Worldwide Networks app, it fixes all technical bug issues that you've been having troubleshooting with some of the playback on the live feed. So all you need to do is delete the current app you have of it and re-download the same app, and the update will come with it. And it usually, and so far it's fixed all the problems that we've heard with feedback.
So is this for the Android people too?
Yes, both Android and iPhone.
Okay.
It applies to both. So just go ahead and delete your current app that you have if you have any troubles with it, and re-download it, and it should all be taken care of. Good.
Okay, well, I'm glad our listeners got to hear that. Okay, again, we want to thank the Graves Propane Company for supporting The Real Deal. And if you're in Arizona and you need propane, please contact the Graves Propane Company in Flagstaff, and they have offices in different parts of the state, and they will take care of you. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I always like to close out by saying, hey, if we're not offended by names, the sports team names that honor Native Americans, then why should you be? So take that one with a grain of salt. And Kyle, why don't you just tell everybody again why I'm here?
To kick ass and save names, Ambassador.
That's exactly right.
Thank you for listening to The Real Deal. Tune in to The Real Deal with the Ambassador and special guest hosts every Wednesday at 5 p.m. and on demand 24/7 right here on Star Worldwide Networks.